Ladies and gentlemen, before this episode begins, I just wanted to announce that I have created a new branch on the GitHub repository. You've got your master branch, which is where we kind of left everything off from the previous episode. That's where everything is. The new episodes, not new, episode 10's files will be found under the episode 10 branch. Very quick update. By the way, sorry this took forever to get out. I've had uni. Uni is finished now. We're done. I should be able to make a lot more videos. So, yeah, we have got to make sure at the start of each episode now that we can upload to a new branch. I'll be creating one branch per episode. They will be titled for where they're up to. So this will be episode 11, so today we're going to be creating a new branch, which I will do right now. Will be created as episode 11. We're just going to branch off of episode 10 and create. And we will publish this. Waiting for it to finish, and we are done. Right, I've created a little demo for what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be making a fair few changes. The first one, we're going to do a little bit of bug fixing. So, currently in our game, I have two copies of this open. As you can see, he may be, he's not jumping. He doesn't have any jump animation. He's still idling when he jumps up in the air. We are going to make this look a little bit more natural rather than him just floating up in the air. An example of this, and I've been told to show examples of what we're making at the start of the episodes, which is perfectly fair and reasonable, I will be doing this in the future, is this. I made this yesterday after my exam. So this is our jump animation. He'll be doing some stuff in the air. He drops his foot down to land, as you can see, and his foot comes into contact, and then he returns back to his idle animation. If anyone is interested, this is what things look like. He's going to jump into a new state, then to a player jump, then go into player land, and go to new state. He can, if he decides that he is just falling, so if I pick up my character in this scene, and I just put him like this, let's put him all the way up here so we have plenty of time to see it. We'll see that he can fall from up here all the way down here without having to press the jump animation. So the jump animation isn't just triggered by the spacebar, it's triggered by his velocity as well. That is an important thing to consider because we don't want him to randomly stop the falling animation, say if I put him up on top of this ledge here. It would be very weird. Now, before we do all of this, we're going to fix a quick bug just so that we can do some testing. I recommend you build something that has a platform that he can hit his head on, and something that he can rub up against. And the bug is going to be, I don't remember if it was episode 10, I think it was. He would jump into things, and he would hit them and stay there. And the same thing happened, I don't know if I showed this, but if he hit his head on something, he would stay up against it, and he wouldn't fall back down, and it would be very weird. So we're going to fix that as an issue. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get our animator. I'm going to drag it over here because I've found I like this layout a fair bit more. So I'm going to zoom in on the player. I'm also going to turn on gizmos. So make sure that you have gizmos enabled and box collider 2D. This particular one needs to be checked. Okay, we need that checked to see what we're doing. So when you select the player, he has all of our components that we've been using recently. So he's got player jump, player movement, circle collider, and box collider 2D. Things that we're going to update, box collider 2D. Things that we're not going to update, circle collider 2D. Make sure you don't do this to the circle collider, because what we're going to do is we're going to create a physics material. A physics material has a form of friction on it. Friction will slow your player down. If you add it to his feet, which is the circle collider, it will slow the player down when he is running along a surface, which is really bad. We don't want that. We do not want him to have friction when he's running, or otherwise it's going to feel like he's running on ice, or he's grating against something, it's going to not be smooth, it's going to mess with the physics engine and cost resources, and we don't want that. So we're going to make sure that we don't apply physics material to his feet. We want to apply it to his chest, but we want to make sure that we only have the box collider that we are working with. So here you can see under material, it says none, physics material 2D. What we're going to do is we're going to jump into our assets folder, and we're going to create a new folder. We're going to call this materials, and we can jump in here, and we're going to create, right click, create, and then we are going to go down to physics material 2D, specifically the 2D. I'm going to call it skin, because I'm going to apply this to both players and enemies when we get to them. And we're just going to set the friction to 0.02. So this means that the player's body itself will, because there's no bounciness, we've made sure that the bounciness is 0. The friction itself will mean that he will hit things, he will slide on them, and he won't generate enough friction. So at 0.02, you can also do 0.01 or anything, basically anything under 0.02 is fine. Bounciness, we don't want him bouncing off the walls. That will look weird. I will show you what that looks like. So this is the error that we had before, right? He would jump and he wouldn't slide down. He wouldn't move at all. Now, because this has the bounciness, I'm not sure why it's doing that. Oh, yep, okay. I know the issue. All right. So this circle collider here is actually rubbing up against the wall. So we need to make it smaller. So we're just going to shrink this down so that it stays in roughly the same position. Now it should work. You'll see that we bounce off the walls. We turn into a weirdly caffeinated freak of nature, basically. So, yeah, we don't want that, which is why we set skin to have 0 bounciness. That's all we need to do on that. Now let's get on to the main portion of the video, which is setting up our animator. Now, we've created some parameters before in our animator. We've created speed. We are going to have to create a couple of these today. I'm going to check the animations that I have. Currently, okay, we've got a controller, we've got idle, and we've got running, which means that we need to create the jump animation. All right, we're going to jump into our player folder and go into jump. The interesting thing about a jump animation itself is that we don't want the entire thing. So normally with the other ones, like the run animation, I would want to play the entire run animation, right? So I'd select all of them. Not for this one. So we've got 2 different jump animations. We've got jump and attack, and then we've got just the regular jump. We want to select jump, and we want to go to roughly about 8. There are 14 jumps, so maybe we want to do 7. So just because it'll break it in half, I'm going to go to 7 for today, but I actually used 8 in the other one. So if you thought the other one had particular pizzazz and you want that and only that, it'll look exactly the same. This is a 30 FPS video, and we're playing 7 frames of jumping up, so you're not going to notice a difference. Alright, so we're going to do the same. We're going to drag it there. We're going to make sure that we jump into our assets folder, go into animations, and we are going to jump into the player. We're going to call this jump up, specifically up, and we are going to save that. It's created another annoying little controller, so we're going to have to delete jump. We're going to have to, actually, we'll do this because we need to create the fall animation as well. So we are going to create the fall real quick, which is just the opposite of jump. We're going to create from 8 to 14. I'm going to drag it into the scene. You can call this fall or jump down. I'm probably going to call it jump down, just because having jump up and jump down makes more sense in my head. Right, so it's created 2 controllers now. We don't need them. You might want to keep them around if you really want to, but you don't need them. So this is what I was talking about with the animation thing. It creates some annoying little extras that I don't need. Alright, we're going to jump back into our player animator. You can select the player and go to the animator, or you can select the player's animator itself in here. I have this open because we're going to want to drag in some things, but first we're going to do something slightly different. So we've got this thing called this base layer, right? Most of you would probably have looked at this and gone, I don't know what that is. We're going to take a look at this real quick, and point out some features that it has. So we've got base layer, and then we've got this thing called, if we click on the settings here, we've got weight, we've got mask, blending, sync, IK pass. You want to learn about anything from mask down, that's for another tutorial to teach you. I'm just going to be talking about layer weight today. We're going to have two different parts of our animator per se. We've got the base layer, and then, which I'm going to rename now to the ground layer. Alright, so we've got our ground layer, and as you might have guessed, this is for when we are on the ground. We're going to create the air layer. So we've got the ground layer, which is set to, if I can click on it, 1. And then we've got the air layer, which is set to 0. We want to make sure that we have those in this order. We will be changing these using code. If you don't want them in this order for any particular reason, you think that it makes more sense to have the ground layer at 0, that's perfectly alright. You'll just need to reverse the numbers that we use in the tutorial. So, we now need to add some things to our air layer. If you remember before, we looked at the animator and it had a couple of, well, it had 3 particular states. So it had the jumping, it had the falling, and then it had another one which was called new state. We have this thing called any state here, right? Any state means that from any state inside our animator, so from idle, running, if we wanted to add attack or defend, anything like that, it can transition to whatever this transitions to when we click make transition and transition it to something. We don't want anything in the jump area to be able to transition to itself, because then you've got looping animations whether you want them or not, and it gets really, really messy. So, for example, the jump animation. If you press jump multiple times in the air, because we're going to link it to the jump button to play the animation when you press jump, and then reset once you're grounded, if you pressed it multiple times in the air, it might break the game. And we could code against that, or we could just add something so that it doesn't do that. So we're going to add, I guess, what you could think of as a parameter, a state parameter that we can apply. So we're going to just right-click, go to create state, hover over that, and click empty. We're going to make sure that any state can transition to this. And then we're going to start adding our animations. Now, the first thing to note is that we want jump down to have no loop time, and we want jump up to have no loop time. So turn the looping off for both of them. So running, it loops. It's told to loop inside the animator. We don't want jumping to loop at all. Alright, so we're going to drag jump up into the animator. And we're going to transition from new state to jump up. Then we're going to drag jump down in, or I'm starting to think I should have named it fall down, but we'll get over it. We're going to make this transition, and then we're going to transition between jump down and new state. So we want this back and forth. We want to make sure we have a back and forth. We're going to create some parameters. Parameters are how we know whether to transition between states or not. I'm getting really sick of having to resize that, so we're just going to make the animator a bit bigger for the moment. We can delete these jump sprites that are added in. We don't need them. So the camera, I'm going to move this so that we have a little bit more FOV. Because the player not being in the middle is quite frustrating. Now that I've got that all set up, let's begin. So, to go between any particular state and jumping up, we want to make sure that we have some kind of parameter. I'm going to create the parameter of a trigger. A trigger is something that is pretty much true or false, but it also has a reset. So we're going to rename this trigger to jump, just because that's what we're doing. It is the jump trigger. So we're going to go into here, and this bit, we're probably going to want the inspector to be a bit larger. so that we can see the entire thing. I'm going to rearrange this real quick. If I select this, so the line, the transition, not the actual state itself, so we want this, we can notice a few things. We can notice that this has exit time, and if we go into settings, we've got all of this. We want to get rid of each of these. So we don't want to fix duration. We don't want to transition duration. We basically want to hang the animation. We want it to just sit there and not do anything if we don't want things to be happening. So when the player is going up in his jump, we want him to finish at the end of the animation, and we want him to stop. Right, now we want to add a condition. So we did this before with running. So we're going to change this from speed to jump. And pretty much when this gets triggered, the animation gets played. So this isn't a bool where it's, okay, it's working, okay, it's not. It's, okay, it is played through, pretty much. It has been triggered to play through, and, okay, it's been reset, and it's waiting now. If that's the difference between... so we're going to create another one, and I'll talk about the difference between these. So this one we're going to call landing. So this is, alright, we're landing, alright, we're not landing. Alright, we're landing, alright, we're not landing, right? So this is, or falling, I guess. Falling, we're going to call it. As opposed to, we've jumped. We've jumped. We've jumped, right? That's the difference. There's no yes or no with a trigger, but there is with a bool. Okay. Alright, I'm going to save, and we are going to jump. No, we're going to add the rest of the parameters. Okay, so we've got jump added to this one. For this, between jump up and jump down, we want to add falling. And we're going to make it so that falling is true. From new state to jump down, so the arrow pointing to jump down, we're going to add the same parameter. Falling true. And then for the back and forth between jump and new state, so the one pointing to new state, we want to make sure that we click falling, but we want to set this one to false. All right, and we're going to save again. So none of these are going to work per se. I'm going to turn off maximize on play. I'm going to mess around in the scene, and you can see that new state is performing, and it's not transitioning now to any of the other animations, no matter what buttons I press. We now need to make it responsive to the buttons that I'm going to be pressing. So save again, just to be safe. Alright, so now we're going to jump into the code. We created a whole bunch of parameters before that we have used over the course of the script. We're just going to use the same parameters today, the same variables. We don't need to create anything new, thankfully. So that's pretty good. We just have to add a few lines of code. Now, oh, no, never mind, I lied. We need to make sure that we have an animator. So we haven't included an animator in this particular script, but we have made an animator required on the player movement, so we don't need to require it for this one. It couldn't hurt, thinking about it. Because if you want to use this script on anything else, it might be a good idea. Also, sorry for bumping the microphone. Yeah, we're going to create a new animator. So we're going to require component type of animator. There we go. And we are going to... We should have done this already. So this is just me fixing some things that we should have already done. This one's going to be the rigid body 2D. Oh, that's right. These are supposed to be surrounded in square brackets. That should be fine now. Yeah, there we go. The errors go away. So underneath here, we can create a private animator Let's just call it my animator. And we're going to set this in start, like we have done before. Oh, wait, my animator. Equal to just get component. And we're going to grab an animator off the game object. Right, now that we've done that, we can jump into the actual meat of it. Because what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using about 3 different lines of code. 2 and 1 with a variable change. So the first one we're going to be using is my animator dot... No? Okay. Let me jump inside a function and see if this works. My animator dot set bool. We're going to be setting the bool falling to true. We're going to be setting it to... We're going to just highlight the entire line. We're going to set it to false. And then we're going to create the trigger. So we're going to get all this. Set trigger. Jump. And that one, as I said, there's no true or false about it. We just need to call it. So now we need to work out where we're going to put these. So I'm just going to copy and paste these. Actually, we'll just remove them and put them up here in comments so that they don't affect anything. Oh, hold on. There's one line of code I forgot to put in. My animator dot reset trigger. Make sure that set doesn't have a capital, but trigger and reset do. No capital for jump. It's case sensitive, so it won't know what you're talking about. Okay, now that we've got them all, let's start putting them in the right spots. So if we're grounded, we want to reset our jump trigger because clearly we're not jumping anymore. Right? We're just by definition not jumping anymore. And we want to set falling to false because we're also not falling anymore. I don't know why I didn't press enter. I must have pressed shift. Whoops. Now, let's jump down a little bit further. If we press the jump button, so in here, we want to trigger our jump. So we're going to grab the trigger and we're going to put it in underneath stopped jumping is equal to false. And if you want to comment this, tell the animator to play jump anim. Anim short for animation. So that's, yeah, if we're on the ground and we tell the computer to jump, it will send us up anyway, so we might as well play the jump animation. Now, if we hold the jump button, well, we're going to want to play it again, actually. So we're going to copy this, and we're going to put it back in under here. And we can save that. Now, if we release the jump button, well, we're no longer jumping. So we're going to set falling to true, right? Because we are now going, we're going down, right? Whoops, wrong one. Now, underneath here, we're going to create a new parameter, basically. So another if statement. If our rigid body dot velocity dot y is less than 0. So you guys know Cartesian planes. You've all done year 8, 9 maths, right? Basically, if you know a Cartesian plane, you know you've got x and y coordinates. If you are below on the y, so if your y is, you're falling, basically. If your y velocity is going down and it's below 0, then you are falling. Then we need to set falling to true. if we step off of something instead of jumping off of something, this will make sure that we actually fall and set the falling animation to true. I suppose we don't really need to reset the jump animation in here, but it might not be the worst practice in the world to do that as well. As soon as we start falling, we can probably reset this. So we'll transition, and then we'll reset the jump trigger. Make sure we do it in this order, or otherwise it'll play the jump animation again. And we should actually be good to go from this. So, let's jump back into our scene. I'm going to maximize just so we can see what's going on. No, I'm not going to maximize, just so we can see the transitions. So. Alright, I know there's going to be an error. Yep. Okay, I did something silly. Okay, one thing that I forgot to talk about, that I definitely need to talk about right now. We talked about layer weights, and I forgot to actually put any code in that will change the layer weight. The layer weight talks about which animation sets we're going to be showing. So you can set them anywhere between 0 and 1. We currently have only 0 and 1. So we need to make sure that those are used at some point. So we need to add a function down the bottom here. We're going to call it, we're going to make a private void handle layers. Now, this is going to need 2 checks. If we are not grounded, right? So if we're in the air, then my animator dot set layer weight, and we're going to set this to 1, 1. So if we look at this function and the definition it's giving us, it's set layer weight int layer index, so which layer, and then the weight of the layer. Basically what we're looking at to 1, so when it reaches 1, we are seeing this and not this, right? By default, this one will always have a layer weight of 1. If something above it reaches a layer weight of 1, then we will see that instead of the ground layer. So that's what we need to do when we are not grounded. We want it to be so that we're playing the in-air animations. However, when we are grounded, so else, we want to do the exact opposite. So we're just going to copy and paste this. Control-C, Control-V, and we're going to set this to 0. Right, now we need to do something above this. We could technically throw it in update, but I'm just going to chuck it in fixed update, because that's how I was taught to do it. Private void, we want fixed update. And all we need to do in here is we're just going to call handle layers. So every update cycle in the CPU, we're calling handle layers, and it will make sure that these are set accordingly. Alright, so we're going to move. We're going to jump. As you can see, it plays a nice jump. We've got a jump animation. As we reach the top of our flight, our leg kind of starts to come down. There's not... The animation of jumping down is a little bit slow for my liking, so I'm going to set it to 2 just to see if that makes it a little bit nicer. I'm going to pick up the actual player himself. And we're going to lift him all the way up here. And then we're going to unpause. And as you can see, we went into the jump down animation there. We'll be updating the grid a little bit next video. As you can see, we've got the cell size at 1. We actually need to change that because the scale that we've been using is wrong. I don't like how we've been doing this. So we'll fix up some other stuff in the start of the next episode. Next episode, we'll probably be looking at either attack animations, or we'll be looking at building an enemy that can just see us. Anyway, thank you all for watching. Appreciate you, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.